Hello, Conversation 2. Here we are again. It is now week 7, and we are halfway through the textbook. I hope you looked at the update. It has not been linked on the website quite yet, but it's up on the channel already, so some of you may have seen it. Very shortly, this evening, I will put a link on the website for you to see. Now, in the update, I didn't talk specifically about Conversation 2 that much. In this class, many of you are Asia Business students. Today's lecture will be a good topic, appropriate topic for you for learning things related to your major. It's a good topic for any major, doesn't matter, but in particular, business students tend to be interested in this topic. It's charity, volunteer work. Now, before we start on that, as I said, midterms are canceled, so I already talked about that in the update. Normally at this point, we would do a week of review and prepare for the midterm, but since there is no midterm, there is no review for it. So we're just going to forge ahead. Now, I will admit that I'm behind in checking your assignments. Some of you are caught up and some of you are not. I'm actually checking by individual, not by class, so I do have to actually search for you individually to get all of your assignments to come up. So some people I'm caught up, but most of you I'm not. So I'm a few weeks back on some people. It's just the most efficient way to do it. Some students have asked for feedback, which is fair. I think you deserve to have feedback. So it's my intention to use this week to catch up, and then next week we are going to try and do something. I'm going to try and arrange something. I'll announce that later. But like I said, I'm going to try to arrange something where I actually talk to you. That was going to be the midterm. I was going to interview you and check on your progress. But since that's not happening, we're going to have to do something like arrange groups or something. What I said in the update was one of my smaller classes is going to be the pilot for that. And I'm going to do it with them first. So you will probably end up doing this video call, live chat, me talking live and you chatting with me, something like that. We're working on it. You will probably do it in week 9, and I'll do it with the small class in week 8 to test it out. So that's the plan. So this week there's no homework, and next week there's not either. So I'm sure this is going to make me popular. I talked with some other professors from our university and from other universities, and there aren't very many classes that have done 6 assignments in 6 weeks. So I think it's fair for me to catch up and give you some feedback on all the work you've done, and I think it's important that we don't burn out. I never intended. Usually what happens is we have the midterm, so you're all practiced up now. You've written on every topic so far, and so you'll be prepared to answer the questions better. There was going to be 6 questions on the midterm, and I was going to ask you 2. But again, we'll probably do something like that. We'll talk about the different topics in the video call instead. So now moving on to today's topic. Today's topic is the chapter name is Doing It for Charity. Now, to be charitable means to be generous to other people and to give people other things. But there's different ways you can do this. There is a bit of an aversion these days to what we call donation. Not everybody, lots of people still donate, and it is a good way, definitely. It is a good way for you to help other people. The main concern is there are people that try to get donations in sort of dishonest ways. And I don't mean just by cheating and scamming. That's one way. You can say I'm running a charity and then take the money and use it for something else. I'm not going to mention names, but there's a certain president who has been known to do that, and he's not the only one. He's just very famous, so he comes to mind. But there are many, many important people that use their influence in order to get money, and they say they're doing it for something, and they end up just spending it on something else or putting it in their pocket. That's one thing, but there's another way too. There's just the appealing to somebody's emotions and getting them to give you money because you're kind of manipulating them, and that's a little bit more insidious. So that there's that, and then there's the fact that if you donate $10, how much of that money is actually going to the charity that you think you're trying to support? Is it 50%? Is it 10%? Is it 90%? You have to understand that organizations need money to run themselves. They need to pay people, or otherwise they can't run completely on volunteer work. It would be nice, but that's usually not the case. Now, the way I'm going to approach it today is, in the book, they're going to give you a bunch of examples, and I encourage you to read the book as always. The textbook is there as a resource, but I'm not going to read the textbook, and I'm not going to talk about the textbook to you, because that's what the textbook's there for, you to read and get other information, not to just have an echo of what I say. That's what the lecture summary is for. That's supposed to be an echo of what I say. And believe me, I know the lecture summary is behind. All of that stuff I'm going to catch up with, like I said, this week, because there won't be any new assignments coming in from conversation classes. So, charity work, the spirit of charity, I think a very easy example is the things that go on in Canada, where I'm from, around Christmas time. Christmas time is when people believe that charity work they pay attention to it. You should be involved in charity all the time. Some people are, and that's great. However, it's during the Christmas season where something called the Christmas spirit sometimes makes people more aware of their responsibility, or the moral obligation, or just, in some cases, just guilt. Like, I should have helped people all year, but I didn't, so I'm just going to do a lot of stuff at Christmas. Whatever the reason is, that's when you see a lot of organizations being very active and people becoming involved. There's all kinds of campaigns and events that could happen at any time of the year, but Christmas is really when charity work really ramps up when you're in North America. It's the same in the United States. Country by country, that you might have a different time of the year or a different event. It might be related to religion, or it might be related to education. It might be a school event. There are many different types. So this is not an assignment. You don't have to do it for homework, but remember, every single topic I give you is a potential question for the exam. So at the end of the semester, we're going to have about 10 to a dozen. Probably the semester there might be more than 10 because of the way things are going, because we don't have presentations in class to look at, but we will see. So around 10, and on the exam there'll be 3 questions, that's the plan, and so you need to be familiar with all the topics, including this one. I'm just not asking you to write me half a page like usual, but you can, and you should actually prepare it by writing, but it's up to you. Now you've handed in 6, and we're going to take a break from that for a while. So charity work, I'm going to ask you about how you feel about charity, and you have some, again, like in any open-ended question, you have some options. I'm going to approach it myself as if somebody was asking me in a job interview, and this is where I'm saying this kind of intersects with being a business major. Many of you are studying in Korea in the Asia Business Department because you're getting the education you want from Korea, but you're also doing it in English. So it's like the international aspect is there, and you may need to write a resume in Korean. You may need to write it in in Chinese. You might need to write it in Uzbek or whatever language, wherever you're from. Or you might have to write in English. And the format is a little bit different. Korean students always tell me they don't know how to write a resume in English. And so I have to show them, or I have to direct them somewhere to find out. Same goes for me in French. I can write in French. Well, I shouldn't say that because it's been a long time. I can write in French, and then I can have it checked so that the grammar is okay. But I just don't know the format. If I had to write a resume in French, I would have to ask one of my French acquaintances Vanessa Bourbon in the French department, or my friend who owns a brewery in Daejeon. Those are the people who would have to reorganize everything and tell me what I was doing wrong. So on a resume, I hope you know what that is. It's a piece of paper that you hand in as part of your application for a job. On that resume, you're going to have one of the things that you might lack is work experience because you're young. So within that section of work experience, you can include experience that's volunteer experience. I have a short resume and I have a CV, and my CV is it's a curriculum vitae. In a curriculum vitae, the CV is just like a very detailed, long version of projects and things that I've done, including volunteer work and positions and licenses and everything. A resume, typically you want it to be just like as close to 1 page as you can, 2 pages maximum kind of thing. It's just to give the idea of the major things that you want to show. But I remember my resume when I finished university. It was pretty short. I did a lot of part-time jobs, but I didn't really want to include stuff like, I think I did have Pizza Hut on there. I worked part-time at a Pizza Hut, and I was a paper boy when I was in middle school, but that's not really that great for experience when you're looking for, a high-paying job or a better opportunity. They're not going to be like, oh, well, Jeremy, he delivered newspapers for 2 years. We want this guy on our team. I'm not really joking there, because I didn't put it on there, but I kind of wanted to, because my resume was so short that I wanted to fill it out. But you will find as you gain experience and you get add things to it that your resume will just explode, and then you'll have to cut it down. So anyway, when you're coming out of university, one of the things that can balance out this lack of paid experience that you have is volunteer work. And so you should have motivation to spend your time to help other people who are not as fortunate as yourself. That's the reason for charity work. But I'm just saying, the other reason you should do it is because you want to have a job and you want people to respect you, right? It's not just that it's going to help you make money and have a stable life. It's also that it says something about your personality. It means you're hardworking. It means you don't waste your time. When you have free time, you spend your time and you do valuable things for society. So if I'm a boss, and let's just say I'm looking at, 20 university graduates from all over Korea, and I'm looking for somebody who's in business, and they're all the candidates are from different countries, but the resumes are, the level of universities and the grades and the age of the people, it's pretty well balanced, right? You all have similar majors, you have similar backgrounds, you're the same age. What am I going to use to differentiate between how are you going to have an advantage over one candidate if it's like, just picking randomly? What am I going to use if I'm trying to choose the best person for my company? Well, one thing is the interview, how well you perform in the interview. Are you nervous? Can you speak English well? Are you honest? Judgments of personality. That's, of course, going to be a huge factor if you have a group of people like that. And also, if I look on your resume, and unlike another student who has not been in any programs, hasn't done any volunteer work, hasn't spent any time working with organizations or networking with different clubs and groups at the university when they could have, but you've got, every year you've got all these different activities, you've got 10 different things. If all other things are equal and your performance in the interview is similar, I'm going to give you the job. I don't have a company. I would like to hire a lot of people, especially the talented people in my classes. But I'm just saying, hypothetically, that's how it plays out. If they have to make a decision and it's very close, then this can give you an edge. So just like you, when I was a freshman, don't get me wrong, when I was a freshman, I wasted my time, and I enjoyed wasting my time. I played with my friends all the time, and I stayed up late, and I was irresponsible and skipped class and so on. However, I did change my attitude. I got a summer job in a factory, which changed my attitude completely because it was a horrible, terrible experience, which made me money but taught me the value of using, getting something more out of my education. So when I was a second year student, I volunteered. And I volunteered multiple things, but I'll just give you one example today. So I'm from McMaster University. It's a university in Hamilton, Ontario, in Canada. You may not know it. It's a good university, though. It's usually ranked fourth or fifth in Canada. And it originally was part of University of Toronto, if you know that university. It's an offshoot of that university a long time ago. In our city, the West End is quite nice, but the East End, because of the usual kind of thing, there was a steel industry that gave people a lot of jobs and supported the East End of the city. Those businesses closed and the companies went bankrupt and withdrew. So thousands of people lost their jobs in the 1980s and 1990s. So what happened was that area, which had employed people previously, the land value dropped and the quality of education, everything declined. And so there was a need for people to help, especially the children grew up without... well, I don't want to say anything bad about the people from the East End because I have friends from the East End, but it's the North End. I shouldn't say the East End. They would be angry. The north side of the city was worse. That's where I went because there was an after-school program, which I think it was called Welcome House, and it was run in a very small church. You could hardly tell it was a church. It looked more like a house. And it was in a very rough neighborhood. And every Wednesday, after school, the kids would come there, and I would volunteer. And these kids they just couldn't control themselves. They had no discipline. That was the main thing. And we just did stuff with them. We did cooking. We played games. We did puzzles. We played sports. The boys always wanted to play sports, and the girls always wanted to cook and bake. And, typical kind of gender, roles, but that's just what they chose. We just allowed them to do what they wanted to do, and that's what they wanted. So generally I took the boys, and one of my friends who was a girl, she stayed with the girls, and they were all really, really unstable psychologically. They just... Middle school students usually have emotional problems, but this is different, and I'll tell you how it's different. I played basketball because I love basketball, and I played basketball with these kids. And in the middle of a game, we were playing, and like one kid took a shot, and he missed the shot. He missed completely. And so some of the other kids like yelled at him and made fun of him and said, "Oh, air ball, you suck," or something like that. Probably not "you suck." Much worse language than that. I won't use the bad language. But basically that's what happened. He took a shot, he missed completely. It was a terrible shot, but the kids made him feel bad. So he got really angry, and he pulled out a knife out of his pocket. And, held the knife up and threatened the other boy. And, I was all of a sudden in the middle of this situation, and I was like, okay, stop, everybody calm down. Everybody was kind of frozen, and I just remember the kid just looking around and just really almost shaking with, his anger and stuff, and then he ran out the back door, and I went after him. And he was by himself and calmed him down, and I didn't take the knife from him because, just told him to put the knife away. And I reported that to the organization, everything. But I never dealt with it. I don't know what they did. But that happened one day. And I continued to volunteer. And that kid never, I'm assuming they told him he's not allowed to bring knives to the church anymore. That should have been obvious. But I can remember that day clearly. And when I got back to the church and I talked to my friend, I said, how is it going with you? And she said, well, sometimes it's pretty crazy. Like there was some girls too in the kitchen that they would threaten each other to like throw, hot oil on, if they got angry at each other, they would threaten them, like, because most likely they were being physically abused at home, right? So it's if that doesn't make you feel bad and make you want to volunteer, I don't know what to say. Like I didn't, even though I was really, uncomfortable with the knife thing, I didn't stop. I continued until the entire semester. I did that, and the following semester I did it again, and then I picked a different charity, different way to volunteer the next year. But my second year, I spent my fall and winter semesters every Wednesday. I spent it with those kids, and that made me feel good. It was never dull. It was never boring with those kids. I'll tell you that much. So I've gone way over 2 minutes now. If you've done something like that, please tell me. If you have some experience like that in high school or the first semester, some of you are still freshmen, and some of you are older. If you don't have an example like me and an easy, when somebody asks you, have you ever done any volunteer work, you don't have to go into that much detail. But in an interview, they might ask you, so what was your role? What did you do? And I told you what I did. I just had to manage the kids and make sure they didn't hurt each other and keep them out of trouble. My job was it's not really babysitting, it's just to keep them doing something active that doesn't involve drugs or crime or fighting or getting hurt or anything. Like, we were basically trying to get them to get some sort of positive experience instead of going home to a dangerous environment or going somewhere else where they would do things that were unhealthy for them. If you explain that simply to me, without all the details, I'm just storytelling, as I usually do in conversation class. But if we're having a conversation, that's how you talk to me. If we're having a test, you have to simplify everything and just focus on the details so it doesn't become too long. But if you were talking to me in a cafe, or we were, whatever we were doing, having a meeting, or we're having dinner or something like that, or, even if we had a business meeting or something like that, and we just wanted to get to know each other, those are the kinds of things that you might talk about. Not necessarily the first time that you met somebody, but this is that's what conversation skill is being able to describe something that interests other people, and to be able to tell the details is an important skill. So that's what I want you to do. If you don't have an example, you are allowed to you can't tell a story, but you can tell me what you want to do, okay? So you can you can talk about the future, and you can just say that it's a possibility. And you can even say, Professor, I listened to your story, and I decided, like, a very short introduction to your interview question would be fine. If you've never thought about charity seriously, but now you think my message was important and it made you think that you should do it, then make a plan, come up with an idea, and tell me what you want to do. There are many different options. You can give money, you can give time, you can give support, you can give skills, you can go in a group, you can do it alone, you can pick up garbage. I have a friend who's a Canadian. She's actually a beekeeper now. She was a professor at a college. She taught science, but now she's a beekeeper. It's a cool job. I wish I was a beekeeper too. But what she does in her free time is she just walks down the road with a big bag and picks up all the trash that people throw out their window. I always thought Canadians were better behaved than Koreans, but it's not so. Because every time she walks down the road in the countryside, this is the countryside, right? It's not a busy road. She's got a gigantic bag full of trash in a country road where you have a car like once every 15 minutes. That means like every car is throwing a piece of garbage. Every single Canadian that drives down that road. The only reason Canadians haven't covered their country in garbage is because the population is so small that there's not that much garbage. So yes, I realized after I saw her pictures, Canadians are bad at littering. Koreans are bad too, but Koreans, the density here is very high. So, it might even be better here than back home. So that's it. Choose a charity, choose some sort of volunteer work, so that you can pad your resume. And pad your resume means make it stronger. That's just a little bit of an idiom there for you. Okay? So that's it. I'm sure you're happy to watch this video lecture, and at the end, just turn it off and not have to write an assignment this week. So I will get back to you. I'm going to email each and every one of you. Please be patient. It'll come. If it doesn't come by week 8, then you can say, Professor, you said you were going to give me some feedback, but please wait until I have a chance to catch up. Also, I can't give you detailed feedback on every assignment, so I'm going to give you feedback on all 6 at once. And that means that I'm just going to look for common mistakes that you make and give you advice, and I will tell you what you do well also. So thank you for listening. That's it for week 7. I look forward to talking to you again next week. Have a good night.